In this podcast, I'm going to tell you why the Pixar movie Inside Out, both one and two, is more than just a kid's film. It's a game changer for understanding your deepest struggles, especially with sex and porn and lying, compartmentalizing, your lack of empathy, and your low self-esteem. In this lesson, I'm going to share with you 4 powerful insights that will help you flip the script on how you see your bad habits and addictions. You are listening to Sex Afflictions and Porn Addictions. I am your host, Craig Perra, the founder of the Mindful Habit System. And for the past 12 years, we've been helping change men's lives, saving their families, treating their partners with the Mindful Habit System. And it has been awesome, 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 awesome. A little bit about me. I was formerly addicted to work, drugs, sex, lying, binge drinking. Essentially, I was a professional number, coper, and escaper, an incredible ability to compartmentalize, a profound lack of empathy, heading really close to that narcissism. Actually, not NPD, but close enough. Close enough. When you do what I've done, that label fits. So I'm going to share with you today how the lessons in this movie, the neuroscience rooted in the foundation of this movie, profoundly changed my life. It gave birth to the Mindful Habit System, 12 years going strong, and I'm so excited to share with you. So, way more than a kid's movie, right? We're going to dive into a little bit of the neuroscience, and we're going to talk about how the psychology in neuroscience underlying this movie will help you understand the true intentions behind the different parts of you that take over when you get triggered. And I'm going to lay out for you a framework for self-leadership and compassion that actually gets results. Okay? First, I'm going to define what a part is. I'm going to highlight the parts that we typically deal with when we are talking about compulsive sexual behavior. And then I'm going to share with you the 4 reasons why the neuroscience in this Pixar movie will radically change your life and how. I'm also going to specifically tell you the needs that your primary negative parts are meeting. So buckle up, join the ride. A little bit about me: decades of traditional therapy, decades of treating my condition like it's a disease. Now, that doesn't mean that that model is not incredibly valuable and there's so much value in the community. This is not a knock onto anything that you're doing. It is designed to supplement what you are doing and give you a framework like it gave me that profoundly and radically changed my life and has since changed the life of thousands. And if you include the podcast and my YouTube channel, millions of people all over the world. So what do I say when I mean a part? Think back to the old cartoons where there's an angel on one side and a devil on the other. A part is a distinct aspect of your mind with its own thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. Another word for a part is called a subpersonality, not a split personality. This does not mean you're crazy. We all have different parts, and you're going to see that when I get into some more of the science. Some of these parts protect you, some manage your day-to-day, and other parts hold your deepest wounds. By recognizing and understanding these parts, you can heal internal conflicts and create a more balanced, integrated self. You can lead these parts to create positive outcomes instead of fighting with these parts. Remember this lesson, write this down. You will always lose in a fight against yourself. And I'm confident by the end of this lesson, you will know exactly what I mean. So, what are the parts that we deal with when someone is struggling with compulsive sexual behavior? I'm going to share with you the common parts that we deal with from the addict perspective, and I'm also going to share with you some of the parts that we deal with from the spouse or partner perspective. From the addict perspective, here are the parts that we typically see. Number 1, the addict. Number two, the liar part, right? And just put that, put a pin in that for a second and think about it. If you eliminate the lying, you eliminate a lot of the addiction. So these two parts work hand in hand. There is also a part that I call for myself personally, the piece of shit part, or the brutal internal critic. This is the low self-esteem, the self-loathing, nothing you do is good enough. Other parts that we work with are shame. Shame, this behavior and the shame from this behavior goes so far back to childhood. Anger and shutdown. You might have a part that gets angry. You might have a part that shuts down, or you might do both. There's another part that it's important to mention for the guys is the resentful part. Every guy going through the mindful habit system who's in a relationship has to check a box and say, nope, this doesn't apply to me. And I'm going to explain the needs that these parts are meeting in a second. If you are the spouse of someone struggling with sex addiction and porn addiction, and you have been compulsively lied to, your primary part is a betrayed and traumatized part. You went to bed thinking 2 + 2 is 4, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, and that your husband was being honest with you. So there's a betrayed part. There is also sometimes an anger part or a rage part that needs to be seen, that is the only way you're able to get your point across. There's also an insecure hurt part. Why is he choosing this instead of me? And there's also a part that desperately wants certainty. And the guys perceive this part as the part that's trying to control them. This is the part that wonders, where is he going? What is he doing? What is he looking at? All of these parts, every single part that I'm talking about is meeting needs. They're not creating positive outcomes, but I'm going to prove to you by the end of this lesson that these parts are actually meeting needs. So let's talk a little bit about the movie. The Pixar movie Inside Out is an animated film from Pixar Studios with a young girl as the main character in the first one. In the second one, she's in her teenage years. The other stars of the movie, if you will, are the different emotions that she has in her head: joy, sadness, anger, fear, disgust. The new movie has a new star, spoiler alert, anxiety. The movie beautifully helps people understand what happens when you suppress a part, when you ignore a part, what happens when a part takes over and hijacks the system and is doing what it has been trained to do. If you haven't seen the movie yet, I highly, highly recommend it, although you do not have to have watched the movie to get value in this lesson, okay? When I learned about parts work, it dramatically changed my life. It gave me a framework to manage these parts. It helped me understand what this part was trying to do. It didn't mean that I was a piece of shit, and helped me realize that demonizing these parts, for me, diseasifying these parts, trying to kill these parts, were only making it worse. And what I love about the parts work, we're going to talk about practically what it means to you, but I want to get into a little bit of the neuroscience to highlight this is not some psychology mumbo jumbo where we're looking through crystals, which I love crystals. I'm not knocking crystals, but this is hardcore science. Let me give you a couple of quotes. Here's one by Dr. Richard Schwartz, founder of the internal family systems model. Neuroscience supports the idea that the brain is organized into a multiplicity of autonomous subsystems that can function independently, sometimes even competitively. This aligns with the concept of parts in therapeutic models like the internal family systems model, and I will add to that the mindful habit system, where different aspects of the self are seen as distinct subpersonalities with their own thoughts, emotions, and intentions. Not only do they have their own thoughts, emotions, and intentions, these parts were trained based upon one, your biology and your environmental conditioning. For example, if I throw a ball at your face and your hand comes up within a matter of nanoseconds and grabs that ball, you were trained to protect your face after getting hit in the face time and time and time again. When you're receiving a question from your wife is criticism or you instantly internalize shame, that's not some aberrant outlier type reality that you're experiencing. You were trained to react that way. And that's why when you go to a therapist or talk to a psychologist, they spend so much time understanding family of origin. What left me wanting when I did all that root cause work, what do I do about it? What do I do about the fact that I was touched as a kid and had this challenge and had that challenge? Parts work gives you that model, answers that question. What do I do about it? And we're going to explain some of that today. Here's another quote that I want to share regarding the modular mind theory or the multiplicity of the mind. Here it is. The brain is not a monolithic entity. It consists of multiple interconnected networks that can operate independently or semi-independently. These networks can be thought of as parts of the mind, each with its own set of emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. This is why people can feel conflicted or experience different reactions to the same situation. Think of the addict part. The addict part wants to do it, and there's another part saying, no, doing that thing will cause great pain. The addict says, no, 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 I'm going to make everything feel better. And we're going to get into that. And remember, all behavior is need-seeking behavior. Every action that you take, every thought that you have is a trained, conditioned response. For those of you taking issue with the word all, good on you. You're right. All's got a footnote. There are certain exceptions to that rule. If anyone knows those exceptions, put it in the comments. Let me know what you think might be an exception to that rule. One client came up with hallucinations are an exception to that rule. That sounds like a good exception. When someone's in psychosis, that might be a good exception. When someone's having a panic attack, not a good exception. That anxiety part is absolutely meeting needs when you're having a panic attack. Meeting needs does not mean creating positive outcomes. They are two very, very different things, but it is meeting needs the way it was trained. Now, let's just talk practical for a second. So we've got the neuroscience support for this model, but think about it just using your brain, right? How many times have you said, damn, there's a part of me that just keeps doing it despite the consequences, despite the shame from those consequences, despite the low self-esteem from those consequences. There's a part of me that wants to stop. Well, and there's obviously another part that doesn't want to stop because you keep doing it. Those opposites actually have a name. They're called polarizations. The part that wants to do it, the part that doesn't want to do it, is an example of a polarization. The wife, from her perspective, the part that wants to control every movement that he has, wants to see every advice, the part that can't stop ruminating about what he's doing, where he's doing it, what he's looking at, what he's not looking at. And then another part, I don't want to be his mother. I don't want to be controlling him. If he can't control himself on his own, this ain't going to work. You've got a polarization. These parts coexist. So you don't even have to know the neuroscience to recognize that we all have these different parts of us that hijack self-control, especially when we are in fight, flight, or freeze mode. And these are the parts I'm typically dealing with. These are the parts that react when you fight, when you are flight, and when you freeze. And we'll get into that in a little bit. Understanding that we have these different parts is foundational. It's absolutely fundamental. So let's get into reason one. I just covered it. I went a little bit out of order. Reason one, The neuroscience reveals the part. This is an evidence-based treatment modality rooted in hardcore science. The Pixar movie Inside Out beautifully depicts emotions like joy, sadness, anger, fear, and disgust as characters. Let me know in the chat if you know the new characters in Pixar Inside Out 2. All right, so check that out. So this is a model supported by science. And understanding that we have these different parts and understanding the science behind it gets me thinking like, maybe I'm not bad. Maybe what I'm doing is all wrong. Once I learned there was science behind this model, it reinforced my commitment to learning it. I've now completed level 1 training in the internal family systems model and fingers crossed, getting ready to start level 2. Number 2, each part is trying to help. Let me say that again. Each part, even the ones that seem negative or destructive, are actually trying to help us the way we were trained. In the Pixar movie Inside Out, emotions like anger and fear and anxiety have crucial roles. Anger helps us assert ourselves. It helps us be seen, helps us get our point across. Fear keeps us safe. Anxiety makes sure we don't make stupid mistakes and people like us and protects us from fear. Fear and anxiety are kissing cousins. In fact, I often use those terms interchangeably. So similarly, our compulsive behaviors and bad habits often develop as coping mechanisms to deal with underlying pain or unmet needs. The addict helps you numb, cope, and escape. And it's why understanding the triggers that awaken the part, the thoughts that the part automatically has, the physiology of the part. Think about this for a second. Anger feels very different than the liar part. That liar part feels very different than the addict part when it's getting ready or being triggered to act out. Each of these parts has a different physiology, and understanding that physiology will help you exercise self-control. So I just want to put that out there, something to think about. Pay attention to how it feels in your body when each of these parts awaken. When I learned that my addict part, that I demonized, that I diseasified, that I wanted to kill. In fact, at my lowest point, I OD'd or tried to OD because I felt worthless, I felt hopeless, and I wanted to literally kill the part of me that felt like he couldn't stop. And think about disease, right? We hear a lot of talk about addiction being a disease, which of course I recognize and understand. I'm not arguing with that. But I want to provide some insight on the perspective. What do you want to do with disease? Let's take the disease of cancer. What is the objective in treating cancer? It's to kill that disease. It is to destroy that disease. And the reality is, from a neuroscience perspective, from a psychological perspective, you will always lose in a fight against yourself. Instead, it's critical to understand what needs these parts are meeting so you can retrain them to meet needs in a healthy, constructive way. Because all behavior is need-seeking behavior, and to break a habit, you have to make the right habit that's meeting the right needs. Let's look now at some of the parts that we deal with and think about what needs is the addict part meeting, for example. The addict part provides a rush, excitement, a reward. The addict part helps you deal with stress and anxiety, the physiology of fear that evolutionarily wired into the deepest fibers of our DNA. Your compulsive sexual behavior helps you emotionally and physically regulate, gives you something to look forward to. gives you a charge, is yours. It's yours. It gives you a sense of autonomy and freedom. When you feel like you're giving everything to everyone else and you're not getting anything in return, there's that resentment part again. Addict steps in and says, I got this. I can help you meet those needs proactively. What about the internal critic, right? The part that called me a worthless piece of shit every time I make a mistake. Sometimes even when I make a mistake now, within a nanosecond, first thought that pops into my head, you stupid piece of shit. Oh, wait a minute. I don't feel that way. I know that's certainly physically not true. I'm not that. What is that part trying to do? What is the critic trying to accomplish? The critic wants to prevent you from making mistakes. The critic wants for you to be your best self. The critic wants you to stop being lazy, wants you to excel, wants you to thrive, wants you to be well-liked, wants you to be successful. So the critic was trained to create those outcomes by beating yourself up. And just look back to childhood and think of where did the critic come from? And like I mentioned before, every one of these parts, just like a superhero or a comic book character, have an origin story, right? Batman has an origin story. Spider-Man has an origin story. Your addict part has an origin story. Your internal critic has an origin story. Your angry part, what does anger want? Anger wants to be seen. Anger wants to be significant. Anger, what it wants right now. Anger wants the freedom to speak his mind. What about fuck it guy? Anybody here connect with the fuck it guy part? And this is the guy who works in concert with the resentful part. The resentful part doesn't feel valued. The resentful part feels like there are double standards in the relationship. The resentment part feels that he's only being criticized. The good things that he does is not being recognized. His needs aren't being met. The resentful part wants you to get your needs met, but it does it in a terribly destructive way because it takes the ball and hands it off to fuck it guy. And fuck it guy says, fuck it. I'm not getting what I want. I don't feel seen. I don't feel significant. I feel all these things. And then fuck it guy and addict work hand in hand. All these parts work together. Understanding what fuck it guy wants freedom. Fuck it guy wants autonomy. Fuck it guy wants to be treated fairly. Now, these statements are skewed. They're cognitive distortions in our brain. They're distortions. They're not reality. There are elements of reality in them. And understanding those true elements, the needs that those parts are truly trying to need will help you break free, will help you nurture, honor, respect, and actually, I'm going to say it, and I know I'm going to lose a few of you here, love that part. Because at the root of this problem for 12 years, from my first video to this one now, I can honestly say the root cause of just about every client that I have ever worked with is lack of love for self. They hate themselves. They hate their parts. And is that making things better? No, because how you feel about a part is how you feel about yourself. So in conclusion, with number 2, all behavior is need-seeking behavior, and these parts are meeting needs. Number 3, why the Pixar movie Inside Out is life-changing and will completely change the way you think of reality, how you're processing information, how you're responding to conflict, how you are responding to fear, also known as stress and anxiety. Reason 3, hating or abusing these parts only makes it worse. So in the Pixar movie Inside Out, we see how ignoring or suppressing sadness leads to chaos and imbalance. In real life, when we hate or try to suppress parts of ourselves, it leads to increased stress, more anxiety, and guess what? More compulsive behaviors. The need to numb, cope, and escape increases. Anyone out there fighting that demon inside them? Anybody out there abusing themselves, anyone out there punishing themselves when they act out, you are likely making it worse. I say likely because if I've learned anything over the past 12 years, it's that different people respond to different things. So that's important to note. Now, instead of abusing these parts, think about you as a boss, right? A lot of my clients are executives, are leaders, are professionals. They're responsible for other people. And it is a matter of scientific fact that you will get more with honey than vinegar. Do you beat these people up? Do you abuse them when they make mistakes? What happens when you abuse somebody who makes mistakes? They get better at hiding. They hate you. They steal from the company. They don't care anymore. Hate the addict? Hate yourself. Hate the liar? Tell more lies. Hate anger? Get more angry. Hate the addict? Have more addiction. It is critical for you to change the relationship with these parts. And that leads me to reason 4, right? How do you do that? One of the beautiful things about parts work is not only does it give you a container for all that root cause family of origin work that you might have done in therapy, it gives you a model for leading these parts. In fact, the term is called self-leadership. And the Pixar movie provides a framework that reflects reality and helps us love and lead our parts. Remember what happened when sadness was stuffed down, when anger was suppressed, when anxiety was demonized and hated, and these parts lost control. The movies clearly shows how acknowledging and integrating all of our emotions leads to a more harmonious and fulfilling life. This framework, leading and loving your parts, is central to the mindful habits system. The goal of every client when they get through the training, and think about this, I want you to write this down. I want you to do it on your own. Okay, if you're not going to be in the program, start working on it now. Okay, what is the name and short description of your primary negative part? Let's start with addict, right? How would you describe addict? What are the triggers that awaken addict? There aren't that many. There's a few discrete instances. Now, it may be happening often because you feel completely out of control, but it's when you feel bad about yourself, when you make a mistake, when stress and anxiety becomes overwhelming, when you get triggered sexually, when you're horny, when your partner expresses her anger. What triggers awaken addict? What thoughts does addict automatically have? You're going to find that there's a narrow category of thoughts that this part says all the time inside your head. Pay attention to those thoughts. We talked earlier about how does addict feel in the body? What habits is addict responsible for? What is addict's job? Understanding the job that it's doing. And here's another question that I absolutely love from the internal family systems model. What does addict fear would happen if it stopped doing its job? From the partner perspective, what does anger fear would happen if it stopped doing its job? I know what would happen. He's going to do it again. He's not going to think I'm serious. He's going to take me for granted again. He's going to appease me and blow smoke up my ass and tell me, the usual blah, 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 blah. He's not going to get help. Now, we know how damaging anger is to the body, the mind, the spirit. That being said, anger is meeting a purpose. Addict is serving a role and has a very specific job. For any of my human resource practitioners out there, do a job description for addict. Take all the knowledge that you have. Any executive brothers listening who's done this before, right? You ever had to hire somebody? Putting a job description is a lot of work. I had to do that once before I got fired. So I do not have a lot of experience, but I know enough to pull from that discipline. And it's fascinating and so enlightening to understand that this part is doing a job. It needs a new job. It needs to meet those needs proactively in a healthy, constructive way. These broken parts of us born from our childhood stuff, and by the way, you don't need trauma. Okay, the science is clear. You can have two people live in a traumatic home. One person thrives, the other person suffers from addiction, obesity, heart disease, all the problems that come from childhood trauma. You can have two people that grew up in the same home where there wasn't trauma. One of them thrives, and the other who receives the best aspect of that training, the other person, because of their unique physical and psychological features, receives the worst. Learn to never feel good enough, learn to hide, always felt subordinate to the other siblings' success. So if you do not connect with the word trauma, if you do, get help. You need some help unpacking that. But if you don't connect with the word trauma, connect with the word training. Ask yourself, how were these parts trained? Why is it that I can bounce a basketball, juggle a soccer ball, shoot a pool cue, throw a dart? But as soon as my partner asks me a question, boom, the don't control me part awakens. The not good enough part awakens. The resentful part awakens, right? There's reasons for that. You have been trained. Your environment, on top of your physiology, has been trained to react that way. All behavior is need-seeking behavior. Remember, there's an asterisk there, and if you've got any exceptions to that rule, I'd love to hear about them. The list is narrow. I think I got a good handle on what they are, but I'm always looking for more. So please let me know in the comments. Email support@themindfulhabit.com. If you have any ideas, what part might not be meeting needs. And I'll share with you this. I did a very powerful exercise with the client, and trigger warning, I'm going to talk about suicidal ideations very briefly. I haven't figured out yet how to do a podcast on this topic safely, because I have to honor the brothers and sisters listening who are in crisis right now, who are hopeless. But I can tell you this, even that part, and for some of you brothers who felt hopeless like I have, you wish you'd drive off the road, you wish you get in an accident, you wish, something bad would happen to you, or if you're like me, may have even taken steps to accelerate that demise, even that part is meeting a need. That part in the internal family systems model is called a protector, and its job is to protect you from any more pain and protect the people in your life from experiencing any more pain. I highlight that because even that part is meeting a need. And when people hear that, and when I learn that, shocked. Now, if that part of you is growing, is getting stronger, it is critical that you get local medical help. And of course, if you are in crisis and if you are thinking of hurting yourself, please call 911 immediately and tell somebody. That is a horrible solution for you, your family, your children. Get the help you need. I've been there. I felt that sense of hopelessness. I wanted to die. And even that part is meeting a need. That's how crazy this stuff is. When you understand your parts and you know where they came from and you know what they need, now you've got a framework, just like the executive does, who's got to manage his direct reports, to lead these parts, to manage these parts, to retrain those parts. They get put on a performance plan. Addict, you're not doing the job well anymore. You are creating pain. You are creating suffering. I know you're trying to help, but it's not working. We need to learn to meet those needs proactively. So first, I'm going to help heal you. I'm going to learn and process and understand where you came from. Where did I get the capacity to lie? Why am I so good at that? Why do I lack empathy? Why am I able to engage in these behaviors despite deeply loving my wife? There's answers to that question. These parts have an origin story. So first, I'm going to help figure out where you came from. I'm going to do as much healing as I possibly can. I'm going to change my relationship with you. Stop beating you up. Stop demonizing you. Stop crapping all over you. To hate a part is to hate yourself. We're going to change that dynamic, and you're going to be retrained. We're going to put you on that performance plan, and we're going to learn together how to meet those needs proactively. And that's a critically important thing, because needs get met reactively the way you were trained, which is why you're listening to this lesson, or they get met proactively. And that's the framework that parts work give you. I think it should be mandatory. Well, mandatory. Please, please, please watch the movies, read the book No Bad Parts. It's dense. There are some other great parts work books out there. If you are a Christian, the book is Altogether You by Jenna Remersma. Some great, great resources on YouTube. Gabor Mate speaks of these concepts and how the addict part is meeting needs and how it's a coping strategy and how that coping strategy was learned in childhood and why, you're able to compartmentalize and have this part of you and that part of you. There's a lot of great resources out there that I believe will dramatically change that internal dialogue. One of the most important things that you can do is not to eliminate negative thinking. That's not going to happen. That which you resist persists. But change your relationship with those negative thoughts. Learn to have that negative thought and use it as a call to action. So, for example, when I'm dealing with my father getting old, having a heart attack, falling 4 times in a week, me not being there for him, and my addict part says, I got a good idea. I wonder if that person you used to talk to is still working. Or I wonder if you could put on a disguise and go to a strip club. Maybe that's a good idea. Hey, how about we check out some porn? Hold up. Right. When you have those thoughts, that feeling in your body, your awareness of those triggers becomes a call to action. It's reaction. Awareness of the reaction drives the new action. Right? And you may have heard this quote often attributed to Napoleon Hill. Some people say Stephen Covey said it. The debate's still open, but between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies the power to choose our response. And in that response is our growth and our freedom. This is the model. This is how you do it. You develop an awareness of what part is hijacking reality. I know that part. I know that trigger. I know that thought. I know that physiology. I know that habit. I know that there's an underlying need not being proactively met. So when I had those thoughts, hold on, I got to deal with the guilt of not being there. I got to deal with the fear of almost losing my dad. I got to confront my own mortality. I got to be present with these uncomfortable feelings. I need to share it with people. I need to reach out to my network. I need to connect. Your awareness of the reaction drives the action. So, let me recap a couple of important points. Go see the movie. The movie teaches us that we have different parts within us, each of them trying to help. We've learned that hating these parts only makes things worse, because that which you resist persists, and you will always lose in a fight against yourself. We've also learned that the movie provides a framework for loving and leading our parts. All that great work that you've done on yourselves, boom, now you've got a model supported by neuroscience and psychology, and it makes ridiculous practical sense. Please, please, please watch the movie Inside Out with this new perspective in mind. I've got a couple of clients in Hollywood, and I have this idea for this sausage party type movie with the addict parts. with the parts that we talked about earlier. I think it can be done tastefully, comedically, but in a way that really helps people understand, like a serious but lighthearted Inside Out. Anyway, well, I'll let you keep you posted and see if that gains any traction. So I encourage you to watch the movie Inside Out 1 and 2. Just watch one of them. Just do it. Just do it. Watch it with your family. Watch it with your spouse. Watch it by yourself. Just watch the movie with this new perspective in mind and reflect on how you can take those lessons and incorporate them into your life. If you need more help, visit the website www.mindfulhabithelp.com. Parts work is a critical component of the mindful habit system. And quite frankly, the more I learn, the more important it becomes. Remember, the journey to overcoming bad habits and compulsive behaviors starts with understanding and compassion for all parts of yourself. You'll always lose in a fight against yourself. And I know you hear me say that over again. The mindful habit is here with you every step of the way. It is an honor and a privilege that you listen to this whole podcast. And I'm honored to be supporting you on your journey. Love your parts, lead your parts, and feed the right wolf. Thank you for listening today. And if you found this episode helpful, please share it with others so you can help them manage their parts in a healthy, constructive way. Until next time, lead all parts of you. Love all parts of you, especially the ones you hate. Make it great, brothers. And you sisters listening, make it great, brothers and sisters. Thanks for listening. Make it great, brothers and sisters. Thank you so much for listening.